Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Python Made Simpler series. So in this video, we will continue with data types and we will be covering up sequential data types. So let's get started. So in the last video, we talked about three categories that were numeric, text, and Boolean. So I hope that you guys are pretty clear on what exactly those are and what type of data types each category consists of. So in this video, we will be covering sequential data types. So in sequence category, as you guys can see that we have three types of data types. The first is list, the second is tuple, and then the third is range. Think of lists as any other list that you guys normally make of different items. In our case, every item will basically be a different data type. A list specifically doesn't have to consist one type of data type, it can have different types of data type. As you guys can see here that in our third example, we have true, which is a Boolean type. Then we have a string, which is basically A. Then we have an integer. Then we have a float. And then we have another string. It can be of one data type as well, the way we have 1, 2, 3 or ABC, these are integers, these are strings, and it can be of different data types as well. As I mentioned, that lists are nothing more than what you guys normally make on daily basis. It's just a way of organizing your data. And how you create a list in Python is as simple as declaring two set of square brackets and just putting things inside them. As you guys can see that we have a set of square brackets and then we have 1, 2, 3. Now our list contains of 3 items. Similarly, in the third list, our list consists of 6 items. Now moving to tuples. Tuples are similar to lists. As you guys can see that in lists, you have square brackets, in tuples you have circular brackets, and then you just simply put whatever you want similar to list. And similar to list, you can put as many data types as you want, it doesn't matter. Your tuple can contain one kind of data type or it can contain multiple types of data types. It will still be valid. So if the format of a list and a tuple is the same, then why do we have those two separate things? Why not just have one? The major difference comes in one of the properties between a list and a tuple. Lists basically are mutable, whereas tuples are immutable. What I mean by that is, let's say if we are writing our code and we want to add something to our list, we can always do that. But once we have declared a tuple, we cannot edit it. We cannot remove an item from it, we cannot add another item. In lists, we can add an item, we can remove an item, we can reassign an item, but we cannot do that in tuple. We cannot remove an item, we cannot add it, we cannot reassign it. What I mean by reassignment is, let's say if I don't want 1 here, I can simply change this to any other number. Instead of 1, I can write 10, I can write an A, I can write anything I want. But I won't be able to do that in tuple. Once we have defined a tuple with that many elements, it will have that specific number of elements and all the elements will be the same. We just simply cannot edit a tuple. Now the third data type in sequential category is range. So how you define a range in Python is as simple as using the range keyword and defining the range within it. So here we are starting our range with 0 and we are going all the way up to 10. So in this, when we'll actually loop through it, we will see that we get numbers from 0 to 9. Now you might be asking that why don't we get 10? Because in any sequence in Python, it doesn't matter whether it's a list, tuple, range, their index position where the first element exists starts from 0. I will show you a more practical example in a minute because just by saying it won't make any sense. I will show you physically what I mean by that. So let's just put a pause to that for now. Now, other category that we have to talk about is mapping. Dictionaries are going to be one of the most important data types that you will ever use in your programming journey. In Python, we call them dictionaries, but normally in other programming languages, you will know as key value pairs because we normally use a key and we assign a value to it. Think of dictionaries as a listed way of assigning variables, right? The way you actually have a variable and you have a value assigned to it. Similarly, in dictionaries, you will have a key and you have a value assigned to it. So whenever you will call that key from that particular dictionary, basically key value pair, you will get that particular value. So here A is our key and then we have 1, which is basically our value. And how you assign a value to a key is by using a colon. So you will see that A is our key here, then we use a colon and then we assign it a value 1, which basically means that we can have an integer as our key, we can have a string, we can have a Boolean, it doesn't matter. Now, one thing that you guys specifically need to keep in mind that you cannot repeat a key. You can repeat a value, but you cannot repeat a key. What I mean by that is, let's say I have defined my key as A, then I cannot use A to define another key value pair inside my dictionary. If I define that, then what Python will do is basically it will ignore this particular A and then it will pick up the value that is going to be after this. I will show you a more practical example in just a minute. So our last category is sets. Sets are also a listed way of representing your data. How you actually differentiate a set from list and tuples. That sets are basically unordered lists, and each and every value that is going to be inside the set is going to be unique. Now let's jump to our text editor and everything will start to make sense. So here we have our first data type that we talked about in sequence, which is a list. And as you guys can see here that I tried to put each and every data type that we have just to kind of make you guys see that it doesn't matter whatever type of data you have in list, you can have multiple data types. And then we know that in order to print it, we just simply use a print command. And if we need a type, then we just simply use a type command. So let's go ahead and print this. And now you will see that it belongs to the list data type, and we have our list printed here. And how we define a list is by using a set of square brackets, as you guys can see here. And this whole thing will be our list. And lists are definitely mutable. You can add or remove elements. You can reassign elements. We will cover that in future video when we will dig a bit more deeper in what exactly lists are and how to interact with them. But for this video, I just want to keep it really basic just to kind of give you an intuitive sense of what lists are and what other data types are, so that you guys know what to expect, and then step by step we can progress further. So lists are pretty simple. You just define them with the square bracket. You can put any data type you want, it doesn't matter. And then you can even repeat elements. As you guys can see that I've repeated A 2 times, and you guys can see that it printed A 2 times. And then lists are mutable. You can add, delete, reassign values inside a list. So let's just comment this out and let's move to tuples. Let's uncomment this. And you can see that I pretty much kept the same arguments the way I had in list, just to kind of show you guys that they are not that different. You guys can see that pretty much we can define each and every data type in tuple the way I defined it in list, and it won't make a difference. Another really key point that you guys need to note that lists and tuples are both structured lists, which means that whatever order that you have defined your elements in, it will respect that order and it will keep those elements in that particular order. And another thing that I mentioned while we were in our slides, that every single thing in lists, tuples, or any sequence basically starts from 0. So what exactly an index position is? So index position basically refers to a place at which that particular element exists in a list or any other sequential data type. So normally when we count, we start from 1 and then we go above, right? Most of the times when we are counting normally, we don't involve 0 in our counting. But in programming, our counting starts from 0, which means every sequential data type will have an index position of 0. So what exactly it means is that here, 1 is located at the 0 index position. Then 2 is located at 1 index position. Then 3 is located at 2 index position, and so on. I know it might sound a bit confusing right now, but when we will go a bit more deeper into these sequential data types and we will learn how to interact with them, everything will make more sense. I just wanted to introduce that particular concept to you so that when we discuss range and when we actually print it, everything makes sense. So now this is basically a tuple, and as you guys already know that the basic difference between a list and a tuple is that lists are mutable. That means you can edit a list, you can remove an element, you can add an element, and you can reassign an element. But whereas in tuple you won't be able to do that. This means this here is a final tuple. So let's just go ahead and print this once, and you will see that it belongs to the tuple data type. And this is our tuple, and it starts with a round bracket and it ends with a round bracket. And here with lists, it starts with a square bracket and it ends with a square bracket. So let's just comment this out, and let's talk about range. So range data type is not that difficult. It basically defines the range between the lower limit and the upper limit that we have defined. How you go about defining a range is by using the range function the way I did here, and as you guys can see that it got colored, which means it's a special function. Another thing that you guys should keep in mind is that words such as range, print, and type, you guys can see that they are colored, which basically means that they have a specific meaning already assigned to them by Python. That's why they are called reserved keywords, which means you won't be able to reassign them. So don't try to reassign them, and anytime when you're using a reserved keyword, if you're using a text editor or even an IDE, it will automatically color it up, and you will automatically get to know that it's a reserved keyword. And you can even Google it up what type of reserved keywords there are in Python, and it will show you a whole list of words that you cannot use as your variable names. It's just something that to keep in mind. When you're starting off, you might be wondering how I'm supposed to remember each and every reserved keyword in Python. But being honest with you, with time, as you will practice more and more, you will automatically know what kind of keywords are there. And like I said, that when we are actually printing range, we will get numbers from 0 to 9, and we won't get 10 because it doesn't include 10. As if you'll count the numbers starting from 0 to 9, you will see that we already get 10 numbers. So don't pay attention to the code that I'm going to type because I don't want you to stress out. We will be covering for loops in the future video. It's just a way to show you how we will get numbers in range. So in order to do that, we just need to do let's keep it there, and instead of this, let's just use an R. Just to kind of show you guys that once you have defined a variable, you can use it any place you want. And then let's just comment this out for now. Let's go ahead and print this. And you will see in the terminal, let me just make it a bit bigger. And you will see in the terminal that we get numbers from 0 to 9 and we don't get 10 because our first number is 0. And now if you guys count it, these will be 10 numbers. So this is a really important thing that you guys need to learn, or you guys need to pay attention to, that in any programming language, your first number will always be 0 and then you will start your counting. It won't be like natural numbers the way you start from 1. It will be like whole numbers starting from 0 and then going forward. So let's just delete that. And now another thing that I want to show you is that in range, this will be your lower limit and this will be your upper limit. Let's say if we just want to print all even numbers, right? Or let's say if we want to skip one number and we want to print every other number. What you can do is you can put another comma and then you can define 2. Now 2 will basically tell range how many steps it needs to take when it's actually defining a range. So let's go ahead and print this. Now once we define 2, you will see that our first number is 0, then we get 2, then we get 4, then we get 6, and then we get 8. So it's printing every other number. If we want to print every number inside our range, we just simply put 3 in place of 2, and then we go ahead and print this. And you will see now we get 0, 3, 6, 9. And similarly, we can change our lower limit. We can start it from 1, and let's say we want to print every fourth number. We can do that. Let's clear this and print it. And you will see we get 1, 5, 9. So 1, and then 4 numbers after we get 5, and then 4 numbers after we get 9. So this is how you print a range. Let's comment that out. Now let's go to dictionaries. Like I said, that dictionaries are going to be the most important data types that you're going to learn in any programming language. In other programming languages, dictionaries are called key value pairs. How you define a dictionary is by using a set of curly brackets, and then you define a key, and then you define its value. And key is going to be before the colon, and then the value is going to be after the colon. So this basically is our one key value pair, then this is our second key value pair, then this is our third key value pair, and then fourth. And as you guys already know, that in any sequential data type, our index position will start from 0, which means that this is at position 0, then 1, then 2, and then 3. Then the way we print them is by using a print statement. You know that, and if we print type, we will get that. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, you might be a bit confused. Here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 key value pairs. But when we print it, it only prints 4 key value pairs. And it doesn't print the key value pair hello B. It only prints hello 3. So what's happening? So like I said, that in key value pairs, which basically means dictionaries, you cannot define two keys that are similar. Here we had hello and hello as two keys that are similar. So what Python does is it just simply ignores the first defined key and it picks up the second defined key. And if we had another key that was named hello just like this, after let's say false, then Python will pick up that as your hello key and it will ignore other two. This is a really important distinction that you guys need to keep in mind, that in dictionaries, you can have the same values, but you cannot have the same keys. In future video, we will talk about why it is the way it is. But for now, just keep in mind that you cannot define two similar keys in dictionary. Python will just simply ignore one of them. That is going to be the first one, and it's just simply going to pick the other one up. And we have already printed, so you guys already know that. So let's just comment this out. And the last data type is sets. Sets, as you guys can see, can contain any data type that you guys want. It won't be an issue. It's similar to list and tuples. the way sets are going to be differentiated from lists or tuples is that sets are unordered lists. The way in lists we had 1 at our 0 index position, then 2 at 1 and 3 at 2. But when we actually print sets, or when we actually use sets again, there is no guarantee that your index position is going to be the same. It will shuffle numbers around, it will shuffle your data types around. That's why only use sets when you need unique values. Don't use sets when you need every single data type to be in its position where you assigned it to be. So let's go ahead and print sets. And just keep in mind that sets are again defined by curly brackets. I was a bit confused when I learned dictionaries and sets because they both were defined with curly brackets. But the major difference is that in dictionaries, you will have a key value pair. But whereas in sets, you won't have that. You will only have elements the way you had it in lists and tuples. So let's go ahead and do this. Now, one thing that you need to notice is that we had two A's, but set only prints one of them. And like I said, that sets are unordered list. You will see that we had 1 on our 0 index position, but now we have false at our 0 index position. We had A in our 0, 1, 2, 3 in our 3rd index position, but we have it at our last index position now. So this basically proves the point that sets are unordered lists, and you only use them when you need unique values. You shouldn't use them when you need every single object to be at its place where you assigned them to be. Now, coming back to discussing A's, you will see that we have defined two A's in sets, but we only get one. This basically again proves the point that sets will only have unique values inside of them. It doesn't matter how many times you define an A, it will automatically count A as one element. It will eliminate the other ones automatically. And then how we get its type is just by printing type, and then you will get the set type. So these guys were sequential data types. These are the most common ones that you will be using on daily basis in your programming journey. Just to kind of recap what we did, we discussed different types of sequential data types. The first one was list, tuple, range. Then we talked about mapping category, which were dictionaries. And then we talked about set category, which had sets. And the major difference between list, tuples, and sets is that with lists, those are ordered lists. That means wherever you place your element to be at, it will be there. If it's at 0 index position, it will be there. It won't change its index position unless you don't shuffle them manually. And then similarly with tuples, those are also ordered lists. That means every element will maintain its position. The only difference between list and tuple will be that lists are mutable. That means you can edit them, you can remove an element, you can add an element, you can reassign an element, but whereas with tuples, you won't be able to do that. Then with sets, as I just mentioned, that sets are going to be unordered lists. It won't matter at what index position you defined your values to be at. When you're actually using sets, every time the index position might change. So that's a really important thing to keep in mind. Then sets will contain unique values, which means even if you are using 3, 4 A's as your elements inside a set, it will just count one A. But whereas with lists and tuples, you can define multiple values that are similar. Then we talked about range. Range is pretty straightforward. You use a special reserved keyword, which is range, in order to define your range. Then you define a lower limit, which is here, and then your upper limit. Then you can basically use a comma to define steps that it needs to take. Another thing that I just wanted to cover up quickly in range is, let's comment this out, and let's just uncomment this and uncomment this out. Let's say if we don't want to define the lower value, right? We don't want to define the lower range. That's perfectly fine. We can just define 10 and it will automatically considered as our upper limit. And if we go ahead and now print this, you will see that we didn't have to define 0. Python automatically assumes that we need it from 0 and we want it up to 10. So it will get 9. But now, let's say if we just add 2, normally we know that after upper limit, we have our step size, but Python won't be able to interpret this because now Python will consider 10 as your lower limit and then 2 as your upper limit. And if you go ahead and try to print this, you will see that you won't get anything. So that's why you have to have a lower number here, let's say 1, and then the upper number here, and then the step size, if you want to define a step size. If you don't want to define a step size and you want numbers from 0, then you can just simply define the value. Let's say if we do 100, then we will get from 0 to 99. All right. Then we just simply talked about dictionaries, and we know that in dictionaries, we cannot have two keys that are similar. That means we cannot have two keys with the name of A or any other thing. In that case, Python will just simply ignore your first entry and it will automatically pick up your next entry or whatever your last entry is going to be inside a dictionary. We will cover more about these when we will dig a bit more deeper in all these sequential data types. I do hope that this video gave you a good understanding of what different types of sequential data types we have. And then in future videos, we will definitely cover more in depth about each and every data type and how we can interact with it. And in those videos, index positions will definitely start to make more sense. If you guys really like the video, do hit the like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching.